evening, or welcome to Warriors of Attraction. Hope you're well. I know Kerry can hear me in the background in the green room. So, Kerry, tell our son it's bedtime routine time. There you go. But yeah, before I put it out there, before we dive into who we've got on tonight, I must say right now, this is a trigger warning to anyone that is going to be tuning in. And if you feel triggered at any point and you tuned in, feel free to leave. Obviously, we don't want to trigger anyone when it comes to this, but this topic is going to be the most powerful and sensitive topics the Mental Health Warriors has ever covered. We've never covered it. And it's called the silencing of suicide loss survivors. So first, please do share this. We're gonna have raw. We're gonna have it straight to the point, blunt, and I'm gonna bring on my co-host straight away. I'm gonna bring on Andrea Evans, and please do share this because this is raw. Because everyone must have had those suicidal thoughts. Like me, I have. So I'm going to bring her on right now. Hello, sister.
Hey, everybody. Hey, how y'all doing? Yeah, trigger
I'm
warning
fine,
because we've all been affected by this, and I know I personally have, and I tell my story. And I tell you, it's you hear it all the time working with families and youth. You know, a lot of people have suicidal ideation. You know, especially now, you know, a lot of people just feel hopeless, and that's understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. And straight away, we've already got a couple of comments. We've got Miss Liz in the house. She's here. And then we've got someone saying, Facebook user. Obviously, we do have to pre-warn that we are using StreamYard. So, obviously, you have to give StreamYard permission for us to see who you are. So please crack on with that. But yeah, we can't stress this to share it, can't we, Andrea? We need shares on this.
Share this. Yeah. Share all of our shows. Yes, share them. And they're pre-recorded. Subscribe, like, and check out the videos. They're on there. If you can't make it, no sweat. Go watch it later.
We still love you. We still love you. Absolutely. Right, the guests. We've got Kerry Duval. Everyone knows who she is. If you don't, why? That's why. Yeah, Andrea loves our Kerry, and so do I. We've got Kerry in the house, and we've also got someone who's never been on the Warriors before, and I'm acknowledging and big respect to Sarah. I'm going to get her surname. I always get surnames wrong, so she's probably going to laugh at me. Sarah Gaer. Am I right? Oh, I'm right. I'm right. I got it in one. She's nodding in the background. Sarah Gaer. There we go. Yeah, who obviously is, hello Lucas, who is basically coming on here and sharing the story of her best friend, and believe it or not, 25 years. 25 years since she sadly took her own life. So you're going to hear raw. That's what I'm saying. So you know what? Why wait? Let's just bring them on.
Bring them on. Let's do it.
Welcome, ladies.
Hey. Thank you.
We're back.
It's nice to be back.
Nice to be back. How do you feel, Kerry?
It's been weird coming back. I've not been on for a while.
Yeah, you miss it really, don't you?
Like I said, once I get safely past the 12-week mark, we can discuss my show coming back.
I know. How do you feel, Andrea, being a great aunt? Joking. No, she's quiet. But anyway, welcome, Sarah, and thank you for coming on to share this story.
Thank you so much, Adam and Mental Health Warriors, for having me.
You're most welcome. You know what? I'm going to have to, because you're new, I think we should throw some quick fire questions at you. I think we should, just to get started. So,
all right, let's see.
Yeah, so I'm going to start. Cat or dog?
Let's do it.
Oh, I have both.
If you had to choose.
Oh, cats.
Okay. Night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Oh, no. Does pineapple belong on pizzas?
Yes, absolutely. Very much so.
Kerry, this is your guess. This is your guess.
See, Adam?
No.
Pineapple, it does.
It doesn't.
9 times out of 10, everybody says yes, it does.
Oh, whatever.
You're just the odd one.
Everybody.
Anyway.
You have and one person that says no.
Okay. I don't even know what to ask now. You put me off, Kerry. All right. Your favourite social media platform? Because I see you on all of them.
Probably Twitter.
Twitter? Okay.
Probably
I'm not
Twitter, yeah.
I'm not on Twitter.
Oh, I like Twitter. I like Twitter. Yeah, I like Twitter too.
Right, let's get started. And obviously, there's more comments from Facebook user, whoever that is. Please identify yourself, register with StreamYard. Right. Suicide. Straight up down into deep end. Forget the shallow end, guys. Deep end. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. What comes to you when you hear that?
When I hear suicide? Well, you know, I've been a suicide loss survivor for a long time. I've been wading through these waters. And for a long time, I did it very, very, very unsupported. And that was phenomenally difficult. But, you know, having gone back to school and earning my degree, but more importantly, getting involved in suicide prevention, it's not, I don't have the same reaction other people hear or have when they hear the word suicide. Of course, I hear the tragedy. I feel the pain and the despair and you know, all of those things for sure. But I also feel a lot of hope because we've made, while we still have a long way to go, a huge way to go, we also have made so much progress in the suicide prevention world since when I became a loss survivor. That I feel both of those things, Adam, both sadness, but also hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's very painful because I think we've all attempted it or even had those thoughts in our lives, and this is why I actually got put in Facebook jail last year because I actually uploaded a post saying suicide isn't selfish. Do you believe it's not selfish?
Not only do I believe that it is not selfish, but we have research that proves that. There is a professor and researcher named Thomas Joyner, who's at the University of Florida. And he has done, he created, it's called the interpersonal theory of suicide. And a couple of the things that he looks at, one, he looks at the belief of suicide as being selfish. And what the research has shown us is actually the opposite. That tragically, most people who are thinking about suicide and making suicide attempts have actually come to a place where they believe that other people are better off without them. Yeah. So, you know, I think we have to differentiate between intention and outcome. As a loss survivor, are there, you know, because there are loss survivors who feel it was selfish, and I will never tell a loss survivor that they're wrong. So what I say instead is, I think let's differentiate intention versus outcome. The outcome The outcome can be selfish because of the pain it does inflict on other people, but that's not the intention.
No. What do you think, Kerry?
Well, I've never actually lost anybody from suicide, but obviously
That's selfish of other people to even incorporate that on a person. Give it.
Yeah, no, well, I've never actually lost anybody from suicide, so I don't know how that feels to lose somebody from suicide. I mean, I can imagine it's obviously not very nice. I mean, it's not very nice to lose a family member or a friend anyway. But my personal experience of suicide, obviously, I've attempted suicide twice. Once was 4 years ago. That was the first time. I'd just lost my nana, and it hit me really, really hard. Adam obviously saved me. And then the second time was 18th of November last year. I hit rock bottom. And that explains why I moved away from the Warriors for a little while, because I had to sort myself out. And then now, I actually, the day I got the tattoo, so I got the same tattoo as Adam, My Story Isn't Over Yet, on my arm. And it was that day that I actually found out I was pregnant. So my story's not over yet. So...
No, absolutely. Well, this is what I believe is we do die, but our story lives on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so story is never over in my eyes. I don't know about you three.
Yeah. No,
Again,
you mean
it's not,
your stories will live on through
it's
your
not
kids,
selfish.
through your friends.
It's not selfish.
No, go on, Andrea.
Me, and I apologize, but I mean that to me when you try to say this, and it's the people that put that heavy load on that person to make they should not put that on the person to make them feel like being selfish. It's the people who come in like that are saying, I'm a survivor too. So, I'm not going to take that. I'm selfish. I know not. That's see what I'm saying?
Well, I know we're having a bit of technical issues with Andrea tonight, so apologies, everyone. Yeah, it's the Nebraska weather, I blame.
Yeah, but I think I can pick up where Andrea was coming from. It's not selfish, because when you're in that moment and you're wanting to end your life, in the lead up to that moment, it's you don't think about how your death is going to impact other people, how they're going to feel about it. The only thing you've got in your head is the fact that you're not wanted here anymore. People would be better off without you. Nobody would miss you. Them sort of things. And obviously, they're not going to be the same for everybody. They're going to be different for everybody. But that's what was in my head, that my kids would be better off without me, that no one would miss me. No one would even notice I was gone. That what was going through my head. The thoughts of what other people would think just did not come into play. It's not selfish. In that moment, it's very much, and you want to escape the world you're in, that dark place that you're in. It's an escape for you. You don't think about other people. So, it's not selfish. I mean,
thank you, Kerry. Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful description. And the way when I do trainings, I try to help people understand is I ask them to think about, a time, and it sounds silly at first, but I think you'll see where I'm going, but a time where you stubbed your toe really, really badly. And right then in that moment that you stubbed your toe really badly, were you thinking about the fact that you might have hurt your children's feelings when you scolded them? Were you thinking about the fact that you have a meeting in 10 minutes? You are thinking about nothing but the pain. And so that's part of why, I feel so passionately about being out there and helping people to understand the suicidal experience, because these myths are dangerous. These myths make it so that, it fuels the stigma and the discrimination and the prejudice and the judgment for people who are experiencing these, this intensity. And
Yeah.
We can't demand that people come get help if at the exact same time, we are believing things that are really negative and untrue about them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there myself when we stood on a piece of Lego and it's like, I told you to put that away.
Right.
Yeah. You don't think how your child's gonna feel in that moment. You just think about that really, really hurt. But yeah, that is a way of sort of putting it, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Miss Liz, as well. Awesome that you're here.
And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I thought of my children finding me. You know what I'm saying? That was thinking of other people. That was selfish right there. That's why I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad I'm here as well, personally, because obviously I don't know about women's mental health and the suicide intentions in them, but I could talk from experience from a man's perspective. And picking on what you said, Sarah, the biggest discrimination, misconception, and all that, and the stigma, it's more attached to the men's mental health because we've practically been brainwashed to be these masculine and man of the house type of people, and we're not allowed to show any emotions or vulnerability or anything like that. But really, we should be.
I don't know if I think I try really hard not to do, that my experience was worse than someone else's or more than, but men and women have different experiences in the mental health field. And, certainly the culture of masculinity is one in which says you should not and cannot be vulnerable. On the flip side of that, some of the things that women face is they're a lot more likely to have the field chalk up their suicidal ideation and intensity to attention seeking, right?
Of course.
So there's discrimination, unfortunately, whether we're talking about men or we're talking about women or we're talking about non-binary people or transgender people. There's discrimination and prejudice against, all different groups of people when it comes to suicide. And that's one of the things we really, really, really have to keep working on changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by speaking like this, that's what Liz said. Thanks for bringing all this. Yeah, and that's why we're here, talking about these things for the very first time. So I want to dive into your story, Sarah. I really do. A bit of you as well, Kerry, and maybe you, Andrea. But obviously, it's 25 years since your best friend sadly passed away. But what mindset did you have when you found out that she'd gone or she was in pain? Or did you know she was in pain?
Yeah, so I experienced a lot of what we call anticipatory grief, which I think is really important. We talk about grief, but we don't talk very much about anticipatory grief and traumatic grief. So my best friend, she had multiple suicide attempts before she died. And so I was not surprised. In fact, I had been waiting for that call. I had had that horrible pit in my stomach, really for a solid 6 months, but off and on for years that we were going to lose her. But I was shocked. It was even when you think you're ready and you think that it's going to come someday, it's still really shocking. And, the flooding of panic, just panic. Mixed in, and this is where some of the silencing of loss survivors happens, mixed in with moments of relief in the sense that I don't have to wait for that call again. I'm never going to get that call again. So at least that call's over. And, there's a lot of emotional reactions, the anger that we're not supposed to be angry. We're not supposed to talk about the anger, right? The blame, which sometimes the blame is just the reality of suicide loss. It's a very normal reaction, but sometimes there really are people who had harmed the person that you loved, whether they were a victim of bullying or a victim of domestic violence or had been mistreated in the mental health, right? Sometimes there really was things that happened to them that it's valid that you're angry, but we're not supposed to be angry. And so I struggled immensely. It's hard to even describe the depth of it, and I think kind of like Andrea, what kept my feet hitting the ground every morning was that I was a mother. And, you know, it was like being an autopilot. But I think, especially that first year after she died, I think the only emotions I really experienced was the anger and sadness, and then nothingness, you know, from the shock. And so, and in a way, I got, you know, really hooked on the anger because at least it was something. And in being angry, there was something it felt like you could do about it. I never did, right? But anger can be empowering. Yeah. And, you know, it was, and back then, we've gotten a lot better since then, but back then, you were only considered a suicide loss survivor if it was family. And so for me, there was no place for me. I was really on my own in that experience. I gained almost 60 pounds the first year after she died. You know, I slept, I ate, you know, and I functioned sort of at the bare minimum enough to get by. But it was a terribly difficult year. And I want to be very clear, that year, Mark, wasn't like all of a sudden you wake up and everything's great. It's, you know, the challenge, the difficulty, the sorrow has eased a little bit every year. But even still now, 25 years, and if as you've seen, Adam, I can cry. I can still cry.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We always say this. Like, I'm always getting shouted at for swearing on camera, and I've had people coming on ranting, swearing, crying, and all that. And I basically said, if you want to do any of that, get it out, because it shows the rawness, it shows the vulnerability, and it shows you're expressing how you feel. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
It shows strength in the day.
Vulnerability warrior.
There we go.
Well, but that's part of the silencing too, right? Yeah. Which is, for somebody like me who works in the mental health field, in the suicide prevention field, I also have to think about my career. And if I come on here, and even though I might want to swear and I might want to scream and I might want to cry, I jeopardize my work, which in the long run jeopardizes everything I'm fighting to do. So, you know, and that's one of the things I am respectfully railing against in the mental health field, which is we preach to people to be raw, we preach to be honest, we preach to cry, but we don't let each other do that. You know? And so that's something I'm going to keep fighting on.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Anything to add, you two?
I don't want the job. Because I'm a human first. And, you know, we have emotions. They arise in us to leave us. So you have to let it go. And, you know, why do you have to sit there and hold it all in until, you know, I don't think that's feasible. It's not being human. Sometimes you can't help it, honey. Them tears gonna hit. And I'm a tough cookie, okay? I used to think crying was weak, but I could watch a commercial now and eyes will well up with tears. It's okay. I'm giving you permission to do it, because you're showing people, you're going to gain that empathy, and you're showing people that it's okay to be vulnerable, honey. You have to be able to do that. You could build great relationships that way.
Yeah, and that's why I put out my series of videos.
I'm sorry that you have to deal with that.
Yeah. No, and that's why I did my series of videos this week, where I was, you know, I really was vulnerable. And, but I also think it's important to let people take the steps as they're ready to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go on, Kerry.
Yeah. Obviously, when you're talking to other people about their mental health experiences, you try and encourage them to let the emotions out and not bottle them up, because bottling emotions can actually make your mental health worse. Whereas if you let everything out and let yourself cry, let yourself be angry, or whatever emotion comes out, just let yourself go up with it, because once you get it all out and you start talking to whoever it is you're talking to. I mean, when I was going through my bad time, I said to Adam, I want to talk. And we sat there for a few hours and I just let everything out of my head. And it felt amazing afterwards. It actually felt like a weight had been lifted. So to let your emotions out, to let everything out, can actually help you to feel better. So it's a way of starting that journey towards healing and being okay again.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always say, let your emotions out, whether it be anger, crying. I mean, I don't need a reason to cry at the moment. I cried this morning for nothing.
You did.
So,
It's okay. And it was for something. It had to come out. You had those feelings, regardless of what you can tie down as being the reason. Those emotions come, honey, to leave your body. And I'm glad that you were able to release it and let it out.
Yeah. Never bottle your emotions. Never bottle anything. If you want to talk to somebody, there are plenty of people to speak to, be it a friend or your family member, or even in the UK, I'm not sure about in America, there's Samaritans. Even if you just want to talk to somebody completely anonymously, so there are plenty of people to speak to if you just have a look. I would always encourage somebody, if you want to talk and you're worried about it, go and talk to somebody you don't know. But always let it out. Never bottle it up. Never bottle anything up.
Yeah, we'll
in
just
America,
adding on to what
down
Kerry said.
we fought, make that number. That number, we changed the number from an 800 number to a 3-digit number. So, if you ever feel that ideation or just stress and need to talk, call 988 in America, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know what they do in America, but here in the UK, they've got people who will see you face to face and even speak over the phone. But if you don't want to do either of them, you can actually text them and they'll text back.
Yeah.
Which I think is freaking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good as well, because obviously not everybody wants to pick up a phone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about texting. My children, they won't pick up that. They won't call me, but they'll text. They'll text. They love texting. So yeah, it could reach more people opening up texting. Brilliant.
Absolutely. So obviously we've all studied some sort of a mental health. We've done our mental health training, but obviously we know the history surrounding it. But compared then to now, the support. I want to touch on the support surrounding that. Do you think support has increased or decreased over time since God knows when it all started?
For people who are experiencing suicidal intensity, or for people who have experienced a suicide loss?
I want to pick on both. Go on, Kerry.
In the UK, I would say there's more support, because now, of course, you can go online and you can just type a couple of words into a search engine, and immediately there's a list of charities, text numbers, phone call numbers, all sorts of information that you can find online at a few clicks of a button, and you've got access to loads of information. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be the similar thing in America. You can just go online and find the numbers in there to get help straight away. I mean, obviously in Britain, we can go to the NHS, or there's the option to go private if you want to. So I think it's opened up. And obviously then you get groups and pages like the Warriors on different social media platforms that offer help as well and offer safe places to speak to people. So that's why I think it's increased.
Yeah. Andrea?
We're having technical issues with Andrea again.
Yes.
It seems like, I'm seeing it different on my end too. It's like, I don't know, when we watch the video, I'm going to see if I'm seeing what I'm seeing on my end on the video. Go back and watch it and see.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Go on, Sarah.
Well, I hate to always be sort of the opposition, but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt we offer more and more supports now than we ever have before. But I'm not convinced that it's the supports that people actually need. The focus is always on getting people, to that crisis line, but people don't just wake up in a crisis. Crisis usually happens over weeks and sometimes months and years. And I'm frankly really tired of, 99% of the conversation and effort being about that crisis situation, that call the 988 call. And there's a lot of other things we need to do in our, in our communities and in our countries. And I don't know how much of this relates as far as you all in the UK, but here in the United States, we know that having access to affordable housing helps to decrease suicide risk. We know that having access to education helps reduce suicide risk. So there's a lot of sociological things that we need to do. And instead of blaming the individual, and we're always out there trying to fish that one person out of that crisis, instead
you
of
look at the root cause, don't you?
Yeah, instead of looking at the whole picture. And how do we make it a culture and a country where people aren't getting into that crisis to begin with? And that's really where my frustration lies. Other people, it's like we have to do more and more and more of what we're already doing, and I'm going, but what we're already doing, we're having minimal success. And I think really what we need to do is sit back, get out of the egos, get out of the money, and start looking at what do the people really need. And part of that starts with listening to the people who are in these situations, which we have done a terrible job at historically. We have all these researchers, all these, the clinicians, and we ignore the people who have been through it themselves directly. And that's part of the silencing of both attempt survivors and loss survivors. I want to take a different route, and I want to say it's time for the academics, very respectfully, I appreciate them, but to sit back, to put down the pen, and to just listen, because there's the real wisdom in this conversation is from people like you guys who have been through this firsthand, and people like me who've survived the loss of somebody. The research, the predominant benefit to the research is for people who need evidence of what we're teaching. We can give them evidence, but I really think it's time for us to look at all of the other cultural needs that people have.
Do you know what? The reason I'm sat like this is because I could listen to you all freaking day, Sarah. I really could, because when I hear someone say change is needed within the system, you've got my attention.
It is needed. When we start seeing things like that suicide risk is elevated after a hospitalization and after a substance use.
Even people coming out of juvenile prison and stuff like that.
Right. And there's so many, and then the racial injustice, like it's not hard to break that data down at all, and so in the United States, our highest risk demographic for suicide for children, you guys heard me right, I said children.
Yep.
Is Black males.
Yeah.
And yet there's so little out there that's really been done to acknowledge that, to start to look at why, because part of it is society needs to take some onus. And they don't want to.
Yeah. In the UK, most of children's suicides, and I do mean children as young as 5 and 6, are committing suicide because they're being bullied. They're being bullied in school, or they're being abused at home, and they don't know how to deal with that other than to hurt themselves. And sadly, they hurt themselves to that extreme where they actually kill themselves.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to deal with it, because they're so young, they shouldn't have to deal with that sort of thing in their life, and because there's minimal education around it. I mean, people say don't talk to children about mental health. All right, okay, don't mention mental health, but talk about feelings. Talk about it's okay to feel rubbish. It's okay to want to cry, but talk about it. Talk to somebody about it. So water it down to where it's okay for that sort of child. So at the moment, our 2 children, they know about mental health, but we've not opened up all aspects of mental health. So now it's, we do this every single day where we ask them, how are you feeling today? and we monitor how they're feeling. So if it's getting low, we're like, right, okay, what's bothering you? And we open up those conversations with them. So then they feel like they have that safe space with mum and dad to have those conversations.
Yeah, there's been times where I've literally come off a podcast because obviously my child was practically, I'm not going to say in crisis, but struggling. So that's exactly what I do. I've cancelled things because that's what it is. Because there's that saying, mental health can impact anyone at any time. And obviously, as I always say, you have to prepare for the unexpected.
Yeah. And you know what, Adam, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. And I think, part of the barrier is that the mental health system historically, instead of seeing families struggling and families in crisis, they have, battered the parents. And in all too many cases, those parents are struggling with their own mental health and their own histories of child abuse. And, so it's really systemic. This is, in my view, it's a systemic failure. But when I hear about children being forced to stand in methadone lines in the United States with their parents, it's like, you're telling me we couldn't do that any better. We couldn't figure out a way to make sure that kids had a room to color in while their parents waited instead of putting them out in a line. And some of this stuff is so simple, it's so small, and it's just about giving a breath of human dignity. And we know that each of these experiences fuels potential risk later in life for suicide. But you know what? Let's also not just think about suicide. Let's think about the depression, the anxiety, the trauma, because suicide's the worst case scenario. But, one of my phrases, and you guys please steal it, but quote me, is all prevention is suicide prevention. If you can prevent hunger, you prevent suicide risk. If you can prevent domestic violence, you're preventing suicide. If you can prevent addiction disorders or substance use, you're preventing suicide. So, we need to be working together. We need to have the mental health field working with the substance use disorder field, working with domestic violence, and getting to those kids as little as we can, and teaching them as many skills as we possibly can when they're little. Because you're absolutely right, Kerry. We're teaching kids about how to bank, and we're teaching them how, about, astronauts and all this stuff, but we're not teaching them how to take a deep breath. We're not teaching them how to stand up to a bully. We're not teaching them how to talk about their feelings. And I don't care what anybody else says, those are the skills that are going to help people be successful in their lives first.
You're going to hear me now, and Andrea's going to, and Andrea and Kerry's going to be like, here we go. But you know what? You know what pisses me off is the fact that see Andrea coming closer here, because obviously the education, I witnessed it myself when I've been in assemblies with my daughter or my son, where basically he's trying to explain how he feels, and all the school is talking to each other, and basically the teachers are basically telling them to be quiet. Why would they do that? I understand there's a time and a place, but if they're opening up how they feel, they should be encouraging that, not tell them to shut up.
Yeah.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine, Adam, but
prevention is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and educating kids about their emotions and how to deal with
can
things.
Be connected.
That's got to be a key as well.
That's right. They should be teaching them in school, but they don't. They don't. Yeah. Here, you can do prevention, and you don't have to be silenced. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention here. Yeah. And you can talk to your government. Oh, wait, I mean, I'm talking, you get to advocate and experience. So there are opportunities, those, like Kerry was saying, go online and search and seek those and make sure that they're safe and get involved. Don't be silent.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I'm going to pick up on what Sarah said earlier about collaboration with like substance abuse and all, or substance pages and stuff like that. we've actually done that. And I'm going to give a little sneak preview of what's coming next week. Is basically we've got a show where someone's coming on talking about anxiety and trauma therapy. Someone's talking about addiction. So there you go.
Yeah.
And
and obviously, go on.
No, go ahead, Kerry.
Oh, and obviously, obviously I'm in the background now, but I do know that the Warriors are linking up with a domestic violence.
Yes.
What's the word? Domestic violence. I completely forgot. It's a domestic violence movement that obviously helps victims of domestic violence heal from what they've been through and create better lives for themselves. And I do know the Warriors are linking up with that. So that's something to watch out for too.
Exactly.
Well, and if I can just throw one thing out, we talk a lot about the victims of bullying and the victims of domestic violence. And yes, both of them are at higher risk for suicide than someone who hasn't been a victim. But a lot of people don't realize that actually the batterer in a domestic violence situation is at higher risk for suicide than the victim is. And the bully is also at higher risk for suicide than the victim of bullying is. And so it's really important because, again, we spend so much time passing judgment. But the truth is, if you're beating somebody up, whether that's a kid at school or that's your partner who you're supposed to love, if you're beating somebody up, if you are purposely tormenting another human being, something's wrong. You need help. And, in our society, at least here in the US, probably,
thank you.
Probably the UK too, but we just put them in jail, right?
Yes.
We put them in jail and then we go, well, how come that didn't fix it? Well, because odds are that person has also been abused. That person has also had trauma. That person has other problems. And if we don't do rehabilitation, it's not going to change. It's silly to think it's going to change. And so, making sure when we work with domestic violence that we're also advocating for, like, what are we doing to help people who are in that batterer position?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because obviously,
do some restorative stuff, some restorative.
Yeah, because obviously, I mean, I'm gonna use children as an example here. So if you're a child going to school and you're bullying another victim, ask themselves why that child is bullying. Is something going on at home, or are they being bullied? Because 9 times out of 10, it is something's going on at home, and that's them.
It's
that's
true.
them trying to express how they.
I'm going to say this straight up. Way before Christmas, our son was being bullied.
I did the research and I did the programming.
Yeah. Our son was being bullied by 2 individuals, and all the school did was talk to them. That's all they did was talk to them. Yeah, one of them stopped, but the other carried on. And obviously it carried on, and the point, he came home and told us about it. So so when he got picked up again, I basically said, so what's going to happen about this bullying? Oh, we'll talk to him. I went, no, enough talk. We need action, because action speaks louder than words. So they did that. They implemented it. They listened to it.
That's right.
Now the bullying stopped. Because this is what pisses me off is when someone gets bullied, when someone's getting bullied, they bring in that do I say victim of the person who's bullying that person? They're bringing them 2 back together, which isn't going to solve anything. It's just going to escalate the situation.
Yeah, and what obviously school did, they separated Lucas
necessarily
from the bully.
Do it in restorative circles. I bring them together, and when they realize, it builds empathy when those children get in that circle and talk about why they did it. You're right. That's the key word, Sarah. Why they doing it? Why?
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, when you find out why, we had to call parents because them kids had been so traumatized. We had to report some stuff. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thanks, Robert
amongst
Brooker.
those children, and they're still cool to this day. They're still cool to this day. So Adam, I have to differ with you, but I think that you can bring them together. It doesn't have to be chaos, but you have to do it in a systematic, safe way. And everybody in the
but Robert Brooker's bang on.
Yeah.
A bully was never born a bully.
Yeah.
And that's, and again, I'm going to keep pushing back on systems, right? But we have to ask ourselves what's happened in our school systems, right? To allow all of this to happen to begin with.
Can I go now if you're going to start talking about schools? No, don't get Adam started with schools. We'll be here for another 18 hours.
No, go on, Sarah.
Well, I just want to share with you like a story that I heard this week. I came across it on TikTok, and it did make me cry. It really did. There was a fight that broke out at a high school. I think it was in Louisiana. 23 students were arrested. It was a vicious, vicious fight, right? So this group of fathers, this group of men decide they're all going to start going to school. I think that altogether they have 40 men who are going to this high school. They call themselves Dads on Duty. And these 40 men are going to that school, and they're talking about this is a lower income school, predominantly students of color. A lot of these kids don't have fathers in their lives at all, or even men in their lives. And so here's an example of how the community can step up, right? Because if all we do is throw the onus onto the system itself, we're not going to see the change. We have to do all of it, right? We have to have the community stepping up, like AFSP with their Out of Darkness Walk. We have to have bills that are coming through to help support the things that people need in their lives and communities. But each of us, and I think Andrea said this earlier, but there is something that every single one of us can do to make this world a better place. Every single one of us. And we can't throw all of that ownership onto the shoulders of the people who are there to do that. Because it's too big. We can't do it alone. And so I think that's the other piece is that what's happening in our communities, that we're not connecting with each other like we used to. And I think social media has been a godsend in a lot of ways, especially through the pandemic. But have you noticed how mean people are on social media?
Yeah.
Yep.
So in some ways, I think it's not doing us any good.
Oh, yeah. They love the victim blame.
Yeah, I believe. Well, you know what? Robert Brooker keeps talking about Alan Stevens. Alan Stevens is a legend. He is. And he's actually taught me something. Is when it comes to the blame game, one person's pointing at someone, but they keep forgetting that three's pointed back at themselves.
Yep.
Absolutely. But they're too brainwashed to realise that.
Yeah, but touching what Sarah was saying about the community, I mean, there is that old saying, isn't there? It takes a village to raise a child. Communities do need to come together and help the kids because, I mean, when I was growing up, we were never in the house. We were always out in groups with the kids, and the parents were sat on the doorsteps watching us with the coffee cups, having a natter to each other, but watching us, keeping an eye on us, making sure none of us got hurt or anything like that. Nowadays, there's nothing like that.
No.
I mean, we didn't hear about paedophiles or anything like that when we were growing up because, they probably did exist, but we never seen them because there were too many parents keeping an eye on the kids. You'd never even get close to a child.
Oh, not in the
No one reported it.
No one reported it here. It was happening.
Yeah, of course.
No one reported it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
that's another topic, guys. That's another topic.
It's not new.
It takes a community to
nothing new about.
Here we go. What have you started now, Kerry?
No, but it's touching on what Sarah says. It takes a community to raise a child. It takes the community to rally round somebody and help them through going through bad patches to prevent suicide. So it's suicide prevention.
A sense of community is suicide
prevention. They say
prevention.
that the village that does not rear children, the children will come back and burn it down, y'all. They said the children that don't get the village rearing will come back and burn the village down.
Yep.
Or sometimes they
it
burn
affects all of
themselves
us.
down.
Yep.
Absolutely. Right. Well, I think
But
Kerry's starting on another topic here.
Okay, the responsibility falls on the parent, right? Usually it falls on the parent. So that's still affecting the family. It still affects the community. It still comes at a cost.
Well,
to the
thing
whole
is, and I've said this
community, because
numerous
if that family
times,
broke down,
is
it's hurting the whole community.
Yeah, well, Andrea, I want to bring back to the system. I do, where I feel sorry for the children here. Because,
I've been trying to rear him from the system.
No, but think about this. Think about this, and this is for everyone. Where I feel sorry for children here because you've got parents blaming teachers or other organisations about what failings they're doing, but then you've got these organisations like teachers blaming the parents. It's like, hang on a minute, you're ticking for tack. There's a child in the middle there. What are you going to do about them?
It's so true. It's so
Thank
true.
you.
And then we have a mental health system that then slaps a diagnosis on that child. And,
Absolutely.
you know, I just did a podcast out of the Netherlands a couple of weeks ago with this phenomenal young man who lost his dad. And he and I really talked about, you know, what happens when you're a little person and the experts and the doctors and your parents are all telling you that you have a mental illness or that you have a learning disability, you know, when in reality, you are reacting in an anticipated way to the adversity that you're facing, whether it's at school or home, and all too often it's both, right? And so on top of all this stuff that kid's going through, now they're getting pathologized, they're getting a diagnosis, they're getting thrown in therapy, they're getting put on mind-altering drugs. And
don't get me started on medication, can't Sarah?
No, I mean, look, I am tired of it. I am tired of the consequences of trauma being pathologized. And
but as well, it's the same as well when parents are basically fighting to keep their children in their care as well, when they're taking on like social services or CPS workers and stuff like that. Like I've had a daughter out there that's been adopted with obviously no fault of mine, but they've used my mental health against me. It's like, since when did they have the power to diagnose people?
Yeah. So it's such a complicated circumstance, and I get that, but back to as being a suicide loss survivor, you know, because I just don't want anyone who came to hear loss survivors talk about being silenced feel like we didn't do much of that. But, you know, part of it is that you often feel like I'm not supposed to tell somebody else's story, right? Because that's private. But when we keep everybody's story private, we have no ability to fight back on the systems. And for me, you know, I watched firsthand as my best friend was told over and over and over and over and over again that she had mental illness. And by the way, back then, there wasn't a very good prognosis for the mental illness that she was told she had. Now, did she have it? I don't know. Right. I mean, I certainly see that she had some characteristics, but as somebody who has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and has worked in this field for 25 years and has specialized in trauma, I can honestly tell you that almost all of her symptoms could also be easily explained by the trauma she had been through. And so what happened when she was convinced that she was broken and that medication, it made her feel dead already. She told me that over and over and over again. And so it was like, here's my choices. Either I don't take it, right, and I'm falling apart at the seams every day, or I do take it and I feel like I'm dead anyway. And so we really have to look at human beings, which is why, Adam, you might remember, I'm talking about the soul. I am pushing back on the emphasis on medication and therapy. Not to say there isn't a place for those things, because on the flip side, I know people, very close friends of mine, who will tell you that learning that they had depression and finding the right medication saved their lives. So I'm not denying that that can be really helpful for some people, but I want to talk about who you are, what's happened to who you are, and what who you are needs to feel like you belong in this world. And that's the conversation that's not happening in suicide prevention or mental health.
Well, let's get started.
Well, I try to bring it in my story for sure. You know, that it around. You could turn it around. I'm here, but it was me being thoughtful of my children and not wanting to put them through that. I'm glad that I have that thought or forethought to do that.
Absolutely.
To save myself.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
there is a lot more conversation.
Self-advocacy, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Kerry, what were you going to say?
There is a lot more conversation that need to happen around suicide and preventing suicide and the reasons why people get drawn towards suicide as being the only option out, the only way out, sorry.
You guys actually have a rock star right in Glasgow that if you
build
don't know
hope
him, you want
squads.
to.
Go on, Sarah.
You have a researcher at, I believe he's at Glasgow University, and his name is Dr. Rory O'Connor. And he just wrote a brilliant book that is so worth the read. And he talks, Kerry, a lot about that sense of being trapped, which is something that suicide prevention really hasn't talked a lot about. And there's a new book that just came out by Dr. Stacy Friedenthal out of the United States. And of course, I'm going to draw a blank on the name of it, but it's about loving somebody who is experiencing suicidality or suicidal intensity. And I think that's the other piece is we're not taught how to love somebody who's in that place or who's struggling. And so people get frustrated, they push back, they, sometimes they disown, right? And so we need to be teaching people how to stand by somebody and how to love them and how to support them. Because I don't know what you guys think, but I think every single one of us needs to know that we have champions in our corner.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got each other.
Yeah, and the other conversation we need to have.
You have to love yourself.
Right, go on,
you
Kerry.
can't love nobody else until you get yourself right.
If you come across somebody that tells you that they've attempted suicide, you don't say, "Oh, we'll stop being selfish. Think of your kids or whatever like that." You're not supposed to say things like that. I mean, I told my parents.
Or don't say you have everything.
Suicide, and that's what I got from my mum. That I was selfish. I should think about my kids, and it's my dad actually stepped up and said, "Whoa, you're not supposed to say things like that. You're supposed to be supportive and be patient and listen to her." She's actually, the fact that I actually opened up and told them less than 12 hours after attempting that I'd attempted, that was me asking for help. That was I need help. And to get that reaction from my mum was really not what I wanted. But my dad, all credit to him, he stepped up and he said, "Whoa, you're not supposed to say things like that." So all credit to my dad. Right.
Last bit. What can people do to prevent, or even just to spot signs that someone is struggling? Andrea.
Look up Hope Squad, Oregon. Check it out. They will train a whole organization how to be able to spot those things and teach the students who are like leaders how to do it as well. So there are some great things out there that we can utilize. And I would say let's utilize those resources so that we can do more prevention.
Absolutely. Kerry?
Have daily conversations that start with, "How are you?" or "Are you okay?" The 3 most powerful words ever, "Are you okay?" or "How are you?" Having daily conversations like that.
Yep,
Who
Sarah?
knows what will open up.
I'm going to piggyback on Andrea's comment because I love the Hope Squad. And the Hope Squad is related to or partnered with the QPR Institute, which is Question, Persuade, and Refer. So what I'm going to say is get trained. Go through the training. If you can't find a local one, which there are trainings everywhere through, the Samaritans do tons of training. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention does tons of training, but find a training. And if you can't find a live training, find an online training. Like the QPR Institute has online trainings that will teach you what the warning signs are, what the risk factors are, and most importantly, how do you show up for somebody that you're worried about? How do you persuade them to stay? And that doesn't mean manipulate. I want to be real clear about that, right? But how do you make somebody know that they're wanted here? And then what resources are out there to get them to? So
Absolutely.
I'm with Andrea. Learn, train. And then, like Kerry said, practice. Be there for each other.
Absolutely. Practice what you preach. There you go. Right. Where can people find you, Sarah?
You can find me at Sarah Gaer, SARAHGAER .com, or you can find me under my name again, Sarah Gaer, on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn.
There you go. Right. Thank you, ladies. I'm used to being the only bloke on podcast these days, but yeah, it's a privilege. So next week, Andrea, we're joined by someone who is the human GPS. She's called Kerry Bear. And we're going to be talking, another Kerry. And we're going to be talking about the higher power intuitive. I've lost
higher power intuitive. Woo!
There you go. Right. I will see you all later.
Bye.